Back in action. Today we talk about strategy 32
Yep.
from the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. This is a very interesting strategy. Dominate while seeming to submit, the passive aggression strategy. I'll just open up one of the things that was very interesting about this chapter is he says the reason why we have an issue with passive aggressiveness is because we're able to understand somebody who is has mood changes, right? One morning he's happy and then the next morning he's very aggressive and mean. We're able to understand that, but our minds have a hard time understanding when somebody is aggressive and kind at the same time. It's like it's hard for us to understand how that works. And then he goes into this very interesting what would you call it, way of being, which is passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, I think that we follow a lot of people, or we used to follow a lot of people. And one of the people that we used to follow a lot, I used to follow a lot, was Patrick Bet-David, and he describes the passive aggressive person as one of the most dangerous people that you can come across in your life. And I think that Robert Greene would concur, because you don't know that they have a long-term vision on what they want to do, and they are going all out, and it's like they're being cloaked. You don't see it coming until it's too late.
Yeah.
They prepare themselves, and then they give the final blow. And they're acting like, friends, allies. And he gives the example of that guy in Haiti.
Amazing example.
Tremendous. Where the guy would
Dessalines.
Yeah, he even got some victories for the French, but every time that he took somebody down, he would give the French arms, but he would keep some for himself.
For the Haitians.
And he was training a militia.
His name was Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
And that's as passive-aggressive, I think, as you can get in history. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good examples out there, but this one was tremendous.
So he was fighting the Haitians on the side of the French. He would keep some of the arms and give it to the Haitians, and he was building up an army of Haitians to revolt against the French.
Exactly, and he was building this army in a remote area.
Yeah, of
and
Haiti.
He kept them safe and guarded from the French. And then one day when there was an outbreak of yellow fever, and the French troops were really in bad shape and taken, sick and so forth, that was the time that he struck. He was ready with his army. He had trained them. He had arms, and he defeated them. He actually liberated Haiti from the French.
Wow.
By being passive aggressive. If we would have confronted them from the get-go, he would have lost. From the beginning, he would have lost. But by working at it, little by little, he got into them.
Greene talked about this Chinese idiom, it's called, of the smiling tiger, the smiling face tiger. So it's a tiger that has a smiling face, but you know that it's a tiger. So it's trying to conceal
he's
who it really is, right?
He's gonna eat you up alive.
It's a sly individual. I've had some interactions where I walk out of that interaction and I can't pinpoint specifically what the person did, but I just walk away thinking that was a very unpleasant situation. And those to me are the passive aggressive individuals. You can't really pinpoint anything because they are doing everything correct. You find it in insurance agencies, in banks, at the DMV. You find it in a lot of different places where they're doing everything I'll give you one example. I had a situation where I don't remember exactly where this occurred, but I needed something done. The person replied behind the counter. Let's say it was at a bank. And then I was trying to find another way to resolve the issue, and they kept repeating the same exact words that they had said originally. They didn't change their sentence at all. It was just the same exact words. But they were doing it in a friendly, smiley looking way. That to me is passive aggressive.
No, I know where you were.
Where?
You weren't at the bank. You were at a car dealership.
Yes, I was at a yeah. Yeah, I
Remember
was
that?
at the car dealership.
You were at a car dealership, and the guy was brutal. You
Brutal.
walked out of there. You weren't feeling good.
He got to me. He got to me, and that's the thing with the passive aggressive warriors. The way Greene's saying you deal with them is by being passive aggressive back.
Right. Correct.
This was a really interesting strategy because a lot of it he goes into how people like Gandhi used passiveness, but he was extremely aggressive, but he did it in a passive way, where it was, what was it, non-violent protests?
Correct.
But he was still very aggressive. He knew that on certain protests, the media was going to be there. They were going to see that the British were beating these Indians with steel, what is it, steel clubs and
Yes,
things like that.
they were beating him.
And they weren't even fighting back.
No.
So this came out in the media and it exploded.
Yes.
And Gandhi was strategic in doing so.
And he liberated India from the British.
Right.
So look, one of the things that I've noticed is that passive-aggressive individuals know their enemy very well. So for example, Gandhi knew the British. He had studied in England. Okay?
What was he, an attorney?
Yeah, I think so. And so he studied law. And in his pursuit of higher knowledge in British schools, he outwitted his teachers left and right. There are excerpts throughout history where there's a teacher that's trying to put him down because he's an Indian, okay, in a British school, and they're out of their league, okay. So these passive aggressive have a very high IQ. Don't kid yourself. These passive aggressives are very intelligent. That's number one. Number two, these passive aggressive people know their enemy very well, maybe even better than the enemy knows itself. You know, remember that Socrates says, "Look, know thyself, and you will have your answers." So these passive aggressives know their enemy very well. So they're very sharp, very smart. They know their enemy. And then they have something that it's extremely important in this type of attack, and that's that they have patience.
Right.
They build up, but they understand they can't face the enemy today, but they'll be able to face the enemy 30 years from now. And there's a lot of changes in the world going on today where you can cite this right now, where some people are gaining strength and changing things. And I think it's happened throughout the world, you know, many times. And we're seeing it happening today in many areas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at business, there, you know, there's a time when, for example, I'm looking at a business, let's say we're in real estate right now, but in the insurance business, there are mega huge insurance agencies. The little guy can't compete with them. But if the little guy buys one agency and then another one and then another one, and they're little, soon they start adding up.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, he's on the map. He's no longer the little guy. He may be, now he can be considered to be a small, group, or maybe even small to medium, you know. And then he might be able to be ready, he or she, to make the next purchase and become large. And so, you know, you don't see it coming. You know, these people are very.
Yeah, you make a few good chess moves, and all of a sudden you're competing with the big guys.
You're competing with the big guys,
Now the
or
big
just
guys,
about to get into that game.
now the big guys want to get rid of you.
So they'll buy
offer
you
to
out.
buy you out, and then at that point you figure out whether you want to sell or not. I remember Facebook, Meta Facebook at the time was offered to sell early on for a ton of money, and Zuckerberg decided not to, and it became something bigger than I think anyone could have ever imagined, or maybe they knew that that was the path it was going, but the competitor offered to buy them, and they didn't sell. He believed that much in what he was doing.
Right.
So it's interesting. The passive aggressive person, I'm telling you, I struggle with dealing with these people
Because we're out of our, we're not
slippery.
like that.
They're slippery. They're slippery, and
you can't.
Yeah, it's very difficult to pinpoint what exact. Like if somebody is straight up rude, let's say, in an interaction, I could be like, oh, this, the person didn't even look me in the eye. The person, whatever. But when somebody is smiling and friendly yet punching you, and you're taking liver shots, and you walk out of there all beat up, yet they're smiling and everything seemed cordial, that is a very difficult person to deal with. Greene, at the ending of the chapter, is saying, look, you can either get rid of them, avoid these people, get them out of your life. Or if you happen to be married to one, figure out how to deal with them. One of the things he was saying is you fight fire with fire. So you passive aggressive with passive aggressive. And another thing is that teach that person to, instead of like being aggressive and hiding these things, put it out in the open, right? If you're married to somebody who happens to be this way, but it's got to be extremely difficult. I struggle dealing with this.
Well, I remember you coming back from that car dealership, and you were. Yeah, he got to you. He pushed your.
Yeah, the person the person that smiles at you and yet is hurting you somehow,
or not helping you.
That person, you want to stay away from him if you can. In some instances, you have to deal with them in business.
And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? Taking care of our family and seeing them prosper. And
no, I don't think so. No, I do think that's putting, let's say, your values upon somebody else.
Okay. You're probably right.
Other people actually get pleasure in hurting people, and they want to get under your skin. So that person is not trying to help you. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what you said, but
no, I think you're right. There is a lot of evil in this world, unfortunately, and some people will have joy in hurting. But the passive aggressive, look, I ran into it this weekend, as a matter of fact.
What happened?
We had the ability to go to a concert, but we missed the deadline. And so, but we had been invited, and it was known that we had been invited to this particular concert. So I ended up going to a person that was in charge of, it's called remedy assignment or something like that. And speaking to that person. And I explained, look, we got invited to the concert. We had a family situation, so we didn't act in the proper timing. But we're here today, and we'd like to go to the concert. Can you do something for us? It wasn't like, you know what, I'm very sorry, we can't do it. You passed the time. It was, let me see what I can do. Let me get your number. Let me call you back, blah, blah, blah. And I felt it that there wasn't a genuine touch to that. So I told to my wife, and I said, you know what? You watch. We're not going to get a call. And sure enough, we didn't get a call. It didn't bother us at all because we ended up going to dinner and having a very nice dinner and enjoying ourselves in the company. And then we did a couple of other things. But if you let it get to you, it's going to be very difficult for you to get rid of it, because if it means that much to you, then it's going to be very difficult to you're going to have to deal with it psychologically, because they're going to
get to you.
They're going to get to you.
They'll ruin your night.
It will if you let it.
If you let it.
If you let it, they'll ruin your night. And I remember I told my wife, you know what? I don't think this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But does it really matter that much? We can see these guys at any other time. Let's just go have dinner. And so you got to figure out a way. If you're married to one of these, good luck. Good luck.
Greene is saying the first step of dealing with passive aggressive is to work on yourself, which is what you're saying. If you let it affect you, they win.
Yeah.
So you decided, hey.
But it's difficult to do
on.
because if you're pursuing this particular thing, then it means something to you.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to let it go, and that takes energy and a lot of talking to yourself and whatever. And then on the other side is, if you get involved, like we had dinner and we enjoyed it, each other's company and so forth. So after the first 2-3 initial steps, it was easy, right? You forget about it and
you move on.
And now it's you have to. Yeah. Because it's not going to happen.
But being in business, we come across people like this all the time.
All the time.
And see, the aggressive person that comes straight on, you can figure out how to deal with them because you know. But the passive aggressive person, it's a little. You got to be more careful with.
They're sneaky.
You may not see it coming.
Like you said, they're slippery.
Yeah.
You can't. And not that you're trying to corner them, but when in the process of trying to figure out that person, you just, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And they don't mean well for you. They have it out for you, but they're not. It reminds me when Greene was talking about doing that book with 50 Cent. And 50 Cent said, I was on the streets, I was dealing drugs, I got shot 6 times or 5 times, and nothing that I went through there prepared me for the backstabbing type of career that the music business is.
Wow.
And I'm paraphrasing, folks, but that's what 50 Cent said. Nothing that I did on the streets, because on the streets you knew who your enemy was, and you prepared for that. In the music business, they smiled at you and gave you a contract where they took everything from you or whatever. God bless you. Bless you.
Excuse me.
And so it was really interesting to read that book, excerpts of that book.
I look back at different stages in my life, different friends that I've had, and I look and I see in some instances I was surrounded by passive aggressive individuals, and they were friendly, smiley, but I don't think deep down that they wanted the best for me. And I'm no longer surrounded by those specific individuals. There may be other people in my life, right, that I don't, but I've over the years weeded some of that out, and circumstances has weeded that out. But looking back, that's one thing that I gotta say, and we're almost done with the 33 strategies of war. We have one more strategy left. But between that and the laws of human nature and the 48 laws, Greene says, when you give somebody good news, look at how they react. When a circumstance occurs that the other person is extremely emotional about, how do they react in that moment when they don't have their mask on? The mask falls off for a moment because they're overtaken by emotion. And when I look back at these circles that I was in before of acquaintances and friends, there was a lot of that going on. And, it's part about growing up, and it's part of life. But now I'm extremely careful, and I want to be careful who I surround myself with. And I feel like I can spot it a little better, because the signs are there when somebody's passive aggressive, or somebody's pretending to be your friend for one reason or another, but deep down that they don't have the best interest for you. There are signs.
There are signs. You just have to be knowledgeable in picking them out.
Yeah.
But see, in the process of reading all these books and doing the podcast and so forth, you have been transformed. And you've been transformed, hopefully,
for the better.
For the better, right? But definitely you can see how some of these things apply to daily life, especially business.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we're in real estate.
Yeah.
Some of these folks...
It's very aggressive.
Some of these folks don't want to have... We're all about relationship, even if we're in the competing career, I've called people that I say, hi, my name is, Pablo Gomez, and I'm a broker. How can I help you? They don't even let me say one more word. How can I help you? And right there and then, okay, well, he doesn't want...
Yeah.
He or she. How can I help you?
I would say that's a form of passive aggressive, actually, now that you bring that up. Because they're saying, how can I help you? Is it supposed to be a kind helping comment, right?
But
or
it's not coming across
question.
kindly.
No, like...
They're cutting you off.
But let's say that you call me, I answer the phone, I say, this is Mike, and you say, I'm Pablo, I'm a broker. And I say, oh, hey, how's it going? How can I help? That's completely different than what you're describing, which you and I have encountered both of those, where this person wants to know, is this a waste of time? They just want to cut you off. They just want to know, like in Spanish, al pan pan y al vino vino.
Right.
Which in certain instances, maybe that is appropriate. But as a welcoming call on, let's say they have a listing, they're trying to sell the property, you're potentially a buyer or bring a buyer, you got to be a little bit more, I would say, welcoming in that call.
Well, I think those folks, to a certain extent, this can be argued on both sides.
Sure.
But to a certain extent, they're doing a disservice to their client.
Yeah.
Because...
You can argue that for sure.
I think, because I've been cut off, in the middle.
Yeah, because a lot of it is the people that you deal with. So, for example, there could be a property that looks really good, and let's say you're interested in buying it yourself, and you call on it, but the person on the other side is a not friendly person. You might just say, you know what, I'm going to pass on this. It's not worth dealing with a guy like that.
Well, the reason that I might think that is because the process of the escrow, which can take 60 days, he's going to run us through the mud. He's just going to, it's a process of negotiation almost all the way to the end sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's not. And it's not that you and I are afraid of a battle. We're not. But it's a miserable thing. And we've gone through it because the deal has been good enough for a client. We stick through it and we fight through it. And
You're right.
We just close it and that's the end of that. And we move on.
Now, if you're on the other side of it, we are, I would say, strong negotiators. But we're not going to hit you over the head from the beginning. And that's where...
Well, then that makes us passive-aggressive.
That makes us passive-aggressive at the right time. Because I remember we were going to open escrow with this one property for a client. And the guy says, I need this, this, and this. You already got us with our pants down.
I remember that.
And you and I were like, because we had negotiated a lower price, and this person's mom owned the property, and so he was emotionally tied to it, and he says, yeah, you already got us with our pants down. And we went back to our client and said, look, they are requesting that to open escrow, this needs to be done according to, they want it done like that. And our client said, nah, I'm going to move on. This guy seems very problematic.
And he was.
And he was.
And
But
that
we could tell
property
from
didn't
the
sell for a
beginning.
long time.
But we could tell from the beginning. But imagine they invite you to the dance, which is escrow, and now you're stuck with them for the whole dance. And that's the process of an escrow. You got to dance with that person until this deal closes.
Right, because if your client wants the property, we're in.
Right.
For the sake of our client, our fiduciary responsibility belongs
Yeah.
from us to our client.
Greene in this chapter talked about channeling the water instead of being a dam. Remember? And so passive aggressiveness, if used, I would say correctly, is a way of channeling the water.
Yeah, because the beginning it says, dominate while seeming to submit. The passive aggressive goes along with the system while dominating the situation.
Yeah, you're the dominant force is the water that's coming down, obviously. But if you're able to guide it, if you confront it with a wall, is a dam, it's going to take down that wall.
Right.
And so I like it. I mean, it's negotiation. But then also knowing how to deal with people who are passive aggressive. That's super important. Because in some instances, you have to deal with them.
Yeah,
right?
You have no choice.
In an ideal world, you just say, I'm just going to not have this person in my life. But what if that person is your co-worker,
your boss,
your manager? Which these passive aggressive people find their way up in companies.
Or, you end up finding a property for your client and he likes that property and he wants it. Then you
gotta tangle.
You gotta tangle with the people. And at the end of the day, it'll make you a better person because everything is a learning experience in life.
Yes.
And you just do the best you can with what you got.
But there are some experiences in life that you come out of them a different person.
I think all of them, whether for good or for bad.
Yeah.
But it was a good chapter, I'll tell you that. Made me think a lot.
Anything else you want to throw in?
No, we're good.
The false surrender. There was another thing I'll throw in real quick was he talks about being outwardly agreeable. So all of these things are manipulative, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I'll just end with this: Metternich, how he was what would you say, like a consigliere type to the Tsar Alexander.
Yes.
And he was able to turn a very liberal and I don't know if he would be considered revolutionary czar, but a very liberal czar, into a very conservative czar by not fighting the czar, but guiding the czar and making him think that these were his ideas and everything. And von Metternich was able to actually turn him from a liberal to a conservative.
Crazy. Absolutely genius, actually.
I had never heard of anything like that occur. So I thought that was a cool example. All right, next week we got our last strategy, and then we're on to another series.
All right.
We're figuring out
what it is that we're going to... Sounds good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.